Hello, I'm Christian. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show, and I'm really excited to meet or have you guys meet today's guest. We talk about this a lot of how important it is to have somebody look out for you. And today's guest is not only amazingly good at what he does, he is a chief victory officer. And you guys meet him right after this. Hello again. My name is Christian. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show, and I'm really excited to have this conversation today with Eric Guy. So, as I did some research on who we could bring onto the show, his stuff always comes up. He is a licensed social worker, he's a motivational speaker, he's an author, and not only that, he is the Chief Victory Officer for the Center of Victory. With that, Eric, welcome to the show and thanks for
Yeah,
being
thank
here
you.
today.
Yeah, thanks for having me and love how we got connected. Yeah, wasn't sure like who's reaching out to me. You always get some funny folks, but that was a great conversation. Probably could have stayed on there all day.
Mhm.
Was looking forward to
Yeah.
being back with you today and hopefully having you on my podcast as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And so the conversation we had to our listeners, so we had just a short conversation, but it's amazing on how aligned we are with what you do with your organization and how you go about supporting the marketplace. And what I feel our podcast is all about and what the culinary industry really needs. It's not the healthiest industry. We all know that. And the latest numbers we had was from 2021, where we had 364,000 people check themselves in the substance abuse program. There was over 130,000 of them got divorced. And it was a very sad year in 22. We had over 1,000 suicides in our industry. So not a great industry to get into. And there's so many people struggling, but it's not okay to raise their hand. So
Hmm.
as we started diving into your content and how you look at this, it's absolutely amazing. And by the end of this conversations, the listeners will know that they all need a mini Eric in their kitchens. So with that, Eric, talk to us a little bit. How did this get started, and how did you develop the person you are today?
Yeah, yeah, it has developed because nowadays I work mostly with businesses and business owners and things like that. But I did
Yep.
start off, as you said, I'm a licensed social worker. Went to school for that. Didn't even expect to be doing that, but went to school for that. Became a therapist. Got my therapist license,
Mhm.
and I just got frustrated with dealing with insurance companies,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to interact the way that was protocol for them. There's some good reasons for that, but that was just wasn't my cup of tea. And so I developed a program where I would go and I would stay with people inside their homes for periods of days, right? And these are people that obviously um, were struggling quite a bit, and they were typically higher up in companies because it wasn't covered by insurance. One thing led to another. They said, "Hey, look, come and do this in my business. If you can get my family together, obviously, we can do this in my company. It would be great." And that's when I started down the road of looking at different types of good, solid assessments that we could take and be part of just come alongside and be part of the bench of the company,
Mhm.
not only to do that, help them with a lot of their hiring and their people issues, but really just everything that comes up. Your group, I deal with a huge group of contractors too, which isn't the
Mhm.
healthiest group of folks either. But when you get them together, and that's why I love what you're doing. I know this is supposed to be about me, but that's why I love what you're doing because I know it works. Like
Mhm.
I have a gentleman that had that vision just like yourself years ago that I'm now friends with. And he's doing the same thing for contractors as you are, um, for your field, right? And that's kind of how we got in here, and started speaking to different places. Have been all around the world. um, Wrote a book, uh,
Mhm.
and now we work with a lot of companies, helping them in all aspects with their people. But really, when people try to give me like when they ask me for a synopsis of what I do, I'm really trying to tell them like I'm in the transportation business. I help people to get from where they're at to where they're
I
going.
love that.
And
I love that.
so if it's mental, it's physical, we started a couple of years ago. We started taking leaders out into the wilderness. So we've got a couple things actually even
I like
coming
that.
up, like the Grand Canyon and Glacier, where we'll take leaders out, work on them mentally, physically, emotionally, and so it's just developed into a lot of cool different things, working with people. I think where you see too that want to excel, just that we don't know how. Some of us just don't know
I
how to get there.
I love that. I love your background. And can you give our listeners a little bit on your personal journey? The challenges you had to overcome in your younger years, and how do you went from there to a motivational speaker now? Teaching leaders to become better leaders. Talk to us a little bit about that. What that was like, and what motivated that.
Well, that is a very interesting story. It's actually what brought the book out. The Life of Victory is the
Hmm.
first book that I put out. But beginning was it was kind of difficult. I was actually in the juvenile justice system before being a teenager. Just had a lot of anger issues. Found a funnel for that, or a
Yeah.
channel for that, in football, but I couldn't. It was hard to separate. Hey, like when you're off the field, you can't do the same things as when you're on the field.
Yeah.
And got me
Yeah.
a football scholarship. I ended up being the first one from my family to go to college.
That's awesome.
Ended up
Congrats.
graduating, but it was in college where I had like the epiphany, like I just don't want to be angry anymore. I see people
Mhm.
being happy, and how do you do it? Like, so I just started seeking different resources, and found what I liked in college. Started being able to read, because when I graduated high school, I could barely read, but just fell in love with reading what I wanted to read: personal development, how you get better, psychology, mental health, emotional health, and emotional intelligence, all those things. And what happened is, and then I met what would go on to be my wife, and she's like, well, if you're going to date me, you better really get your act together. So that gave me motivation. um, she said yes to a date after about 15 consecutive no's. And we started down that journey, and it just progressively got better in what I did, because of some of the pitfalls we fell into.
Mhm.
um, when she was pregnant with our second child, our daughter, she had a stroke.
Oh,
And we were doing very well. I had three offices at that time, and we lost everything and had to focus on her health. So that
yeah.
put me more into, hey, look, what's all this? How do I impact the physical side? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
how do we impact this physical side of people? And so started learning more and more about that. And that's what really, doing those things and really branching out on my own. That's what put me on a national level, and that's what put me going around globally, speaking to people with all those little things that piled up. Just how do you get happy? How, or
Yeah.
is it possible? um can I have a passion and not be miserable all the time? Can I have a family? Can that family be happy? All those things that I think we all want at our very nature. And how do we, obviously, now that we've had some success, how do you balance all that, right?
Mhm.
How do you balance all it, and don't go down the slippery slope of any kind of abuse, like substance, or whatever it might be. You have
Yeah.
that little bit of success, and it gets stressful, and you get time crunched, and things get a little bit easier to slip into, that aren't going to put us in the right frame of mind, or around the right people. So
Yeah.
these are all questions that we've tried to ask, and that we help people with.
I love that story, and thanks for sharing. It's a very powerful story. Every time I hear it, it's there's so many of our listeners can relate to that. because life has that, innate ability to kind of make us aware or kind of rattle our cage a little bit to make sure we serious in what we do and how do we react to that. And when people read your book, you talk a lot about empowerment, and talk to us a little bit about what that whole idea of, or defining that empowerment you talk about in the context of leadership, and especially in an organizational culture.
Yeah, I think the big thing, at least for me and the groups that we do inside of companies and things like that, I mean, if you could boil it down, right, to three really big things is one, get to know yourself. I mean, take a walk,
Hmm.
like really get to know yourself. And that's why we do, the assessments. We have a litany of assessments that are very personal. Um, so get to know who you are, or what your gifts are, what your wheelhouse is. After you know yourself, then the other piece is the second piece is choose yourself.
Hmm.
Like
I love that.
that is you, right? If I tried to do what you do, like I'm not going to be good at it. I think it's great. I can't wait for this
Yep.
culinary quick round that we're going to have later that you keep telling me about. Um, because I think I'm a foodie. I love food, but I mean, I just don't know how to do anything with it, right? And then the last piece is create yourself, and that's where people
Mhm.
stumble. When they start to choose themselves, and then it gets really scary for them, because when you have to do that, you're different. You have to, I don't know what your path was along those lines, but you had to decide at one point, like, hey, Christian, what do I want to do? What do I want to
Yeah.
become? How do I get there? And then how do I create it? And then a lot of people are like, I don't want to create it, so just slide back and be mediocre.
Yeah, I love that, and you make it sound so simple. I think that's the hardest thing to create. I mean, even in the industry, when you talk about kind of accepting yourself. I know a lot of hospitality professional chefs don't like themselves, the
Right.
way they are, and I think that's really hard. But then, kind of accepting that and creating, oh, just it's a whole different thing. So talk to us a little bit about that. How do you guide people through that? What are some of your success stories, and what is a common thing you see with high performers all the time?
So yeah, I mean, we do, like I said, we do some assessments. So the assessments are behavioral in nature, they're motivational in nature, and they're just how the current worldview of oneself in nature,
Hmm.
right? So it's like a really deep dive. It's like like a PET scan if you went
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just yeah. So we're not just doing an X-ray; we're going deep, and we're having people answer those questions like what do you want to do, like what's your 10-year plan, how do you even set a goal, what's the difference between a goal and a to do. People
Hmm.
really struggle with those things, and I think high performers do. They're set to be high performers, but then I think they spend too much time trying to figure it out on their own. It is simple if you follow the process,
Hmm.
but it's difficult, which gets me to that. I think the most important answer there, what do I see in high performers? A lot of times I think can be just boiled down to fear.
Yeah.
So, fear of disappointing other people in their lives. Um, I deal with a lot of high performers, especially people like in your field and musicians and athletes that struggle with their performance once they hit a certain level is
Hmm.
they're afraid that they can't continue to perform,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's like, oh no, I did this, how can I replicate that? And then they get
Yeah.
stuck, and then they either backslide or move forward if they figure it out.
I
um,
I love when you talk about this, because in your book you talk about being vulnerable and asking for help, and you hit upon earlier. I think a lot of the chefs think, "Oh, I need to figure this out on my own. It's my thing. It's just me against me." Because if I ask somebody to come, it's perceived as weakness because I ask for help. Do you
mhm.
see this in other high performers, or is this just specific to the culinary industry?
No, I think it's all it's across the board. I mean, it just, don't ask for help. And then, what got us there is some of us, whatever field that is with a high performer is some of us had to do a little bit on our own.
Hmm.
So we had to figure it out. And then when we get there, it's like, oh, I'm afraid if I show this weakness, everything's going to crumble.
Mhm.
You know, you're so working on that, and I think the further you get up and the further success you have, I think that's when all those cracks start showing their face. I obviously struggle with that. I've got a whole little stick for high performers. It's like a whole page of things that, hey, have you ever felt like you're not good enough, that you can't perform well enough, that you can't, this whole list. And they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm like, well, this is every high performer that I've ever worked with.
Mhm.
And it goes back to a lot of times you just get pulled in so many different directions. I know a lot of high performers, once they start down a certain road and they're having success, is they start letting other people unconsciously define who they are and what roles they should
Love
play.
that.
And then that high performer gets frustrated and they don't even know because it's going on unconsciously.
Mhm. I
Um,
love that. So how do you translate this into an organization or a not just the organization but the culture of it? And how do you approach then building and enhancing that culture overall in an organization?
Well, I think a couple of things. Like if you look at the research and the statistics about really what harnessing like a great culture, a couple simple things that most companies don't pay attention to is are the people that we have in the right position. So right
Yeah.
person, right seat, right. The second piece, and we're seeing such a huge gap in it right now, are our managers equipped? Do they know how to handle the people? Because they haven't. A
Mhm.
lot of us haven't had training. So there's, it goes back to the old saying: people don't quit their job; they quit their boss.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times that will create a lot of exiting of high performers because they won't, especially in now in today's job market, they don't have to put up with that. They can walk right
Yep.
down the road and
Mhm.
typically get another job.
And
Looking at
and
what
sometimes
team,
a little bit more money too.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, and then the team, to look at what team they're on. Are they on the right team? Did we prep the team? Like if it's somebody that's totally different but that we need, like being making a strategic hire and a strategic placement based on what we need, our talent needs, not always on
Mhm.
what feels the best. And
Yeah.
that's going to create that dynamic culture. But being very intentional, I think the companies that are intentional about creating their culture and having core values that they live out every day, that they measure people against, that they reward people for, that they review over and over again, those are going to create those high performing cultures. And I think the other thing is, what we've seen a lot and what we do a lot is we challenge teams. Like
Mhm.
one of the ways we challenge them is taking them out, and having them going rim to rim,
I just think
through the
that's
Grand
really
Canyon
cool.
in one day. Well, we still got a couple openings, Christian, if you want to go in October. Um,
I maybe next time because I'm
yeah,
afraid I need to ask for help. But now I
yeah.
love I just find it so fascinating. And as we started diving into what do you do, and when you talk about high performance, when you talk about behavioral things, I can take your book and just put in chef, restaurateur, and just put it in. It's so as I read it, I was like, "Oh my god, he wrote it for the culinary industry," because it's so it's is it universal, you think? Or is it something which is a service industry, issue?
Um, I think it's across the board. I think some of the reasons we get into the service industry are very
Yeah.
good. Like we want we want to give back, we want to see people happy, and but like you can only give what you have. Like if you're if you're on empty and you're back making some masterpiece for somebody, it's only going to be as good as you feel,
Mhm.
kind of thing. But I think it is across the board with people. I think people want to, want to be happy. They want to, have purpose, and they want to do what feels good to them. And none of us, like very few of us, have gone through life, especially when we were younger, where
Yeah.
we've had somebody guide us through that. And that's why so many of us need a coach now, just to say, hey, what's going on? Like, we're very good players, but I've had a coach for, oh geez, the better part of 2 decades. And there are some things that I probably know that he doesn't. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean he's not a good coach, because what makes him a good coach is that he holds me accountable. You said you were going to do this. Hey, you said you had, we know you have trouble asking for help. Like, it's time to ask for help, or whatever that might be. I wouldn't be, the book wouldn't have come out without that coach, because I let it sit on the shelf. It was edited, ready to go. And I was just like, it's done. Check it off the list. And he was, he hounded me for a year. He's like, get it
That's
out, get it out, get it out.
so. So Eric, when I hear that, it makes me laugh because we have a publishing company. It's called Premier Hospitality Publishing Company. It's
Right.
a company we have, and the people which sign up to get their book on the marketplace. What do you think the first thing they say is? My book is done for 17 years. I just needed somebody to tell me to get it done. Or people saying, I've been I've been starting 15 years. I start over, and then I just get stuck. Life just has a way of kind of putting up some walls and some barricades for me to break through. And sometimes it's just easier to stop. And for me, that goes back to what you just said. It's the mentor. You always had that book in you. It just needed
Hmm.
somebody to see in you what you don't see in yourself. And that's so powerful what you do with the Center of Victory, where you talk about that empowerment model, and talk to us a little bit more about it and how that is different from what's currently out there.
As far as the empowerment piece,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, looking at a real good mentor or coach, or whatever you want to call that person, um, isn't going to enable you, or or even entitle you to go back to the behaviors
Mhm.
that where you're at. Like, they want
Yeah.
that status quo is not good. So there has to be something. And that is, I believe, and I tell this to everybody, whether it's a therapy session or it's a coaching session where I'm working with a group of leaders, like, I want them to find the answers, and going
Mhm.
back to getting to know yourself, choosing yourself, creating yourself. You don't need me to tell you how to be, because that's not empowerment, that's enablement. I'm allowing you just
I
to
love
not
that.
really push into who you really should become. You have that answer, we just got to pull it out of that unconscious place. And it's a lot better when they figure it out, or that person
Mhm.
figures it out, rather than me. I might see it, and sometimes it's hard to be patient with that. And sometimes people get frustrated with me about it. It's like, just tell me, just tell me, just tell me. I'm like, there's a great utility in figuring out yourself, having
Mhm.
that little bit of suffering where you're going to, you know go through some valleys, where you need to go through that to find out who you actually are, and remember that, so when you get to the other side, it's you that's done it, not
Yeah.
anybody else.
I absolutely love that. And I want our listeners to go back 2 minutes to what Eric just said, because it's perfect, spot on. And especially in our industry, we don't do really a good job in asking for help. We don't do a good job looking at mentors. But the few things you just said is exactly what they need to do to kind of become better versions of themselves. Because sometimes it's not it's not something, it's all the time. It's not about the great food you put out there. Is if you
Hmm.
can lead a team from within, if you can see the thing beyond what's going on with you, how are you going to grow as an individual and make a bigger impact in the industry and for your team at large. So for me, that's so powerful. And every time I hear you talk, make it sound so simple. And for me, I look at the clock, I can talk about this forever because it's so true. If it doesn't come from within, I love that. By the way, I wrote that down. There's a difference between empowerment and entitlement. And also, I have, choose yourself, and we are all in the transportation industry. Um, so for me, it's so powerful, and you make it sound so easy when you talk about it. And I know you're doing a lot of seminar and training programs in your area. So talk to us a little bit about what that the impact is after people coming to that. And if, by the way, if any of our listeners are in the Pittsburgh area, you guys need to check out what Eric does and not just walk there, run to one of his next events, because I think it's could just have a whole new direction in your career. But talk to us a little bit. How um, do the people coming into your seminars and your programs benefit in what you do, and how was the impact you had in your area?
Well, I think one of the things that is that, when we look at those three things, they start with that knowing yourself. I mean,
Hmm.
very few get to the create piece because just I
Yeah.
think some just fear. They think they don't have time. They look in the mirror when we give that information to them, and they're like, "Oh, that's too scary," so they back into mediocre again. And some of them are just. I think some of us are just afraid to be great, and
Hmm.
that's what we try to uncover in the seminars. We do them. We obviously, because of COVID, we do a lot online now, which is great.
Hmm.
I don't have to travel quite as much, but like I said, we've been around the world with this information. One of the fun things that we started doing a couple years ago that everybody seems to love, and I love it too because we get everybody there. We get young people, we get old people, we get all kind of business owners, and that is Vision Day. So this is something we
Love that.
started internally with our family years ago, and then when they got into high school, they started inviting their friends over, and it's like, oh, okay, like we wanted to do it with the family. Well, we
That's
we
cool.
want our friends here. They need it. They need it. They need it. And I'm like, I don't disagree. So then, my wife's idea was to do Vision Day in our community. So we
Hmm.
started 2 years ago. We had 50 people show up for that first one, and just kind of threw it together off the cuff. Last year, it grew to 90 people, and
That's
who
awesome.
knows where it'll be this year. But that's what we do. So we walk through in that day. We walk through the neuroscience of success. Like, here's what it takes. Like, I share my story. Everybody thinks I just popped out happy. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, that I was a miserable, angry person that not many people wanted to be around, and relationships were hard for me. And it's ironic
Hmm.
that that's what we help people do now. So we go through all that neuroscience. We tell people about themselves a little bit, give them education on that, and then start getting into setting goals. So we walk them through that. We set some goals, and then at the very end of the day, we have all kind of crafts. We have vision boards in the back. Everybody just grabs one, and we start creating together at the tables. Right. And a lot of
Hmm.
people, the more we do it, the more people will follow up with us naturally. I just had somebody in our community walk up to me a couple Sundays ago and say, "Hey, look, I want to go over some things with you. When can you meet?" So it's starting to have an impact even
Yep.
that
Yep.
way as well. And I think that's just one of the things if I could do that every day and just sit down with a person and make a difference in their life and just show them their greatness, yeah, that's a good day to me.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And by the way, I can talk to you about this forever, but talk to our audience a little bit. You know, what is Eric working on his business for the next 6 months, and what is Eric working on Eric for the next 6 months?
Um, so what are we working on as a company? One of the things that, like I said, the leadership adventures, I think that's going to be a good
Hmm.
thing. We dabbled in that last year before we did a full court press this
Hmm.
year. So we have a lot of exciting things going on there. More involvement with the companies.
Yep.
I've got a couple people. Yeah, it's just the timeliness of when you called and what you do, because I'm starting to work with other people like that. And like I said,
Yep.
I
Yep.
work with a group of contractors, and it just bringing together that community. And I remember the first time the gentleman in your spot said, "Hey, look, I want you to come to our one of our retreats. It's just a bunch of contractors. It's really good." And I'm like, I've been around a bunch of contractors before.
Yeah.
I don't think getting them all in a hotel, that's never been a good experience. But it was eye opening. These are people that came and they wanted to work. They weren't sitting at the
Mhm.
bar getting drunk and loaded all night, getting in fights and
Yep.
stuff like that. These folks were dialed in. They work hard all weekend. They're extremely supportive of one another, and they created a network like you're creating in the culinary industry where they can reach out to one another. We have a call
Yeah.
every week that I run, and we just go over different topics that are specific to them. It opens them up for questions. We do question and answer. We bring in guest speakers sometimes to that, typically from that community.
Mhm.
Put a couple people in hot seats sometimes, ask them what's going on.
Yeah.
It's a group level of accountability, and it's
Love
like I
that.
said, it was very timely when you called. I'm like, how does he know what else I'm doing? It was like, I'm like, this is kind of creepy. Like,
Truth be told, we did check up on you, and
yeah,
we got actually. I read your book. I I didn't read it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I went 10 pages. Oh, this is awesome. And he was like, we need to have him on the show, and that's how it started. Because for us, one of the things we're doing, and I told it in the beginning, is I want to make sure I get a good understanding what our audience hopefully needs, and having people like you on, I was like, this guy fits the mold, and everything he does, just take out contractors and put in chef, take out contract, put in bartenders, and he works. It's just, it was for me really awesome, and it's exciting to hear that you have that impact, and
yeah, and
what
I
you do.
think what you're doing too, right? Like I said before, and I just wanted to reemphasize this. Like
Mhm.
you're working with people that want to help other people, like
Yeah, yeah.
that desire somewhere in their heart. Like they're not sitting behind a computer crunching data or anything like that. They want to
Mhm.
be in a service industry. And I think it's hard sometimes. Well, I know it's hard sometimes because we give and we give and we give, and then we don't
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
attention to ourselves, and then we wonder why, 10 years later we're,
yeah, yeah,
75 pounds overweight, addicted to, alcohol, and we've
yeah, yeah,
lost our family. It's like, oh
yeah,
well,
yeah.
you went down that slope, right? So
So, what are you working on yourself for the next 6 months? What is your plan of growth for Eric?
Well, it's to get more involved with actually folks like you. I enjoy that.
Yep.
I enjoy being part of those communities instead of just being like all over the place with all kind of companies. Um, I think to stretch myself, um, is stretching others. I think
Yep.
the who knows where those next adventures are going to be next year. They're going to be longer adventures. They're going to be harder adventures, and just getting myself around the right people. But those adventures, I love seeing that. To be able to do more of those and do more retreats, so people can really have a huge impact in a few days and go back and really affect their businesses and
Mhm.
their communities and their families.
I love that. I love that. So, I want to be respectful of your time. We try to keep our episodes about a half hour, but I think the stuff you're putting into the marketplace is so valuable. And I encourage all of our listeners to learn more about you, get a hands on your book, and maybe get to one of two of your events. And if you're up for it, I would like to play with you what we call rapid fire question food service edition. So let me know if you're up for that.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been waiting for this. So,
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. So, our listeners, my team puts together brand new questions every week. They're 25 questions, and our version of rapid fire question food service edition. So, I will ask you for a number. If you don't mind, give me the number. I read the question and then answer whenever you're ready. So, give me a
all
number
right,
between 1 and 25.
all right. Let's start with 13.
13. Have you ever made a dish so bad that you wouldn't even serve it to your worst enemy?
Ooh. Probably it hasn't been a while, but there have been some things that have just be like it's better off in the trash. Yeah, we say yes, not too many times, but yes.
I love that. Next number between 1 and 25.
Let's go with 7.
7. What is the most bizarre kitchen injury you have ever had?
Well, this just happened recently, and it was kind of scary. Actually, it didn't happen to me; it happened to my daughter. Um, some of our cupboards have glass in them,
Yeah.
and one evening we're all together, we're having a good time, we're in the kitchen, some of us are eating, some of us are, you know, cooking, whatever, and one of those huge pieces of glass just for whatever reason fell out and cut her in the head.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was laughing, and she turned around, she's got this big gash in her head, she's bleeding everywhere. um we laughed about it later. It was kind of scary at the moment,
Oh
but
my
that
God,
was
that's
like
wow.
we were all together as a family, everybody saw it and was like, oh my goodness, let's yeah. So that's probably the worst one.
Oh, wait, that's fun because we just had somebody on the episode. He said he made this amazing dish. Every came out perfect. I did the victory dance, pulled my hamstring, and had to
What
go.
was the
uh, number between 1 and 25.
23.
23. If you could make any food calorie free without changing its taste, what would it be and why?
I would say ultimately, if it was my like best day, I would do some kind of really good pizza followed with ice cream.
Oh,
Right? Just no calories, man. I could just, it's always on my mind, when I'm eating that kind of stuff. I don't
that's
get it very
awesome.
often, but man, boy, that would be great.
Awesome. A number between 1 and 25.
Let's go with 3.
It goes with the other answer. Pineapple on the pizza. Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. My family's gonna hate me for that. They always know I will always, even if it's at the house and it's not, I will always put pineapple on pizza. I love
There,
it. I love it,
there,
especially if it's really good pizza. I absolutely love it.
there's a whole movement to get the pineapple off the pizza.
Oh,
Oh, that's
I can't get enough of it, especially with some good prosciutto or ham.
awesome.
Oh man, that's just so good.
Oh, no, that's not fair to the prosciutto.
Yeah.
Last question between 1 and 25.
Let's go. Let's go with 8.
8. If you could be any kitchen appliance, what would you be and why?
Any kitchen appliance. Probably if it fit my food preference would be a blender, because sometimes I have this and it makes people sick. Like I just put all my food together, like on the plate sometimes because I just want to eat, and it looks just like my. Sometimes my family will take pictures of it and be like, "That looks disgusting," and I'm like, "But it tastes so good." Like, you know how sometimes you just put things in a blender and it doesn't look great and it just comes out so tasty. That's what I think what I would be.
I'm not sure if I can relate to that, but okay, that completes our rapid fire question food service edition. Eric, that was awesome. So thank you. Just make sure when you have the blender meal, don't invite me to your house. I don't think I
Yeah,
can make it.
right.
So with that, Eric, tell our listeners where can they learn more about you and how can they get involved in your content?
Sure. Centerforvictory.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's how we first connected.
Yep.
Christian was on LinkedIn. We have a channel, Center for Victory, on Instagram. We have a big channel now on YouTube. You can follow us on YouTube, where we put all our videos, a lot of training videos. We put a podcast out every week. Hopefully, you'll see Christian there
Yeah.
in the next couple months here on our podcast. So you can reach out that way as well, or just get on our website, Center for Victory, and just give me a call.
And awesome. I really appreciate it. I encourage our listeners to reach out to him. I reached cold outreach. He answered, had amazing conversation. And the day we have you as a guest. So I really want to say thank you for that. Thanks for the gift of your time. And also thanks for sharing so freely. It's really amazing. And I encourage again our listeners to check you out. We also have all the information in the show notes below. But I really appreciate you being here. And to our listeners, if you want additional content, behind the scene glimpse, join our private community, which is the Disruptive Chef Club. You get a front row seat of all things Great. So with that, Eric, any final words of wisdom for chefs, hospitality professionals?
Well, I would say if you don't know where you're going, figure out where you want to go, and then
Mm,
get to know yourself, get to choose yourself, and m- be be all you can be, and go out and create yourself. And you're doing a great service to the world if you go and do that.
I love that. That's really good advice. And then also remember, we are in the transportation industry. We also have choose yourself. That's really, I underlined it there 3 times. And then I think we all need a victory day. So with that, Eric, thanks for being here today. We really appreciate you. Thanks for the gift of your time. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And to our listeners, if you haven't done so, go to the private community called the disruptivechef.club. You get up to date notifications. You could see some behind the scenes episodes we put out there, and also some of the new things we're working on. Until next time, remember to disrupt your kitchen, fire up your career, stay hungry for change. I'm Christian, your disruptive chef entrepreneur host. I'm signing off. So that means that Eric and I are out of here. So be the change, be the challenge, and be the chef who sets the world on fire. With that, Eric, thank you. We really appreciate it. It was amazing. You need to promise a 2.0. And to our listeners, go out there and stay disruptive, everybody.